In this episode, we are joined by Danica Smith, a guest experience strategist based between London and Barcelona, and she's the founder of Morningstar GX.
It really frustrates me when you see brands that have a super personalised, seamless booking experience, but then the bathroom's not clean.
Danica helps hotels and hospitality tech companies turn real guest feedback into real results, blending data-driven strategy with a very human touch.
You speak a lot about online reputation. How have you seen that change over your time?
With the rise of AI and imagery, I'm super concerned about what is a real property anymore.
We get into bad reviews, misaligned campaigns, influencer deals, and why your mum's Facebook habits might just be the most honest guest journey map out there.
In the context of digitalization, I really like to use my mum as well. She's on Facebook 8 hours a day. Let's not just focus on Gen Z.
Join us as we go into this next episode on the Digital Concierge.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Digital Concierge. I'm very happy to have you.
Thank you. Finally, we've made it. Let's meet for a coffee. Let's do the podcast. So I'm so pleased to be here, Holly.
So we skipped the coffee and we went straight to the podcast.
Exactly.
So to share with people maybe how we know each other.
Yes. Yeah. So we met, was it last year or the year before? Not relevant to the listeners.
They're blurring.
So we met at a Women in Thrive business event, which is all about bringing inspirational women leaders and founders in Barcelona. And we had that cool summer event. I think it was last summer. Yeah. And that was where I met you. And now I'm a huge LinkedIn fan of yours, loving what you guys have built and created, and always following. So I'm really, really excited to be on your podcast today.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. So I will let you introduce yourself for people that don't know you.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm Danica Smith. I am pretty obsessed with guest experience. So I come from a hotel marketing background. So that's why I love this topic. And at the time, I was kind of in charge of online reputation management. So this was back in 2012. The whole book direct strategy, book direct conversation was very present, and I realized the importance of online reputation. So fast forward 15 years, I now work for myself, and I have two different strands to my business. I support the operators and hoteliers directly, helping them really understanding what's happening with guest intelligence data, leveraging it to make sure that they improve guest satisfaction and the guest experience. And then on the second path is working with the hotel technology vendors to help them understand what's really happening in terms of guest experience trends. How can they make sure they're using guest intelligence data to really understand how their technology is moving the needle in terms of guest satisfaction? So that's kind of my mission and passion, is guest experience, which I feel is overused in the industry.
In what way? What way do you feel it's overused?
You'll go into ATM, WTM, ITB, and you just walk down a corridor, and every single exhibitor is like the guest experience with a load of blue icons. And it's like, really, if you're a financial controller tech vendor, are you really implementing and enhancing the guest experience? Like, when my mother stays at your property, does she really engage with your technology? No, you're not part of the guest experience. You're a financial controlling tech vendor, you know? Yeah. So I feel like every technology vendor is kind of clinging on to the guest experience. And when I talk about the guest experience, it really is when I always use my mum because I love her. But it really is like when my mother interacts with your brand, starts that guest journey, how does she experience that journey and process?
But I love the fact you have a person that you root back to, because I think this is a bit the problem when we're talking things guest experience. We end up thinking so much from a brand perspective that it's like, okay, let's just for a second remember we are consumers as well. So if you can't imagine yourself going through that scenario, find that external person. What's their guest journey? Yeah. So I love the fact that's your mum. So very sweet.
Yeah. And in the sake of, in the context of digitalization and, digitalizing the guest journey, I really like to use my mum as well, because I'm like, hold on, like, she's on Facebook 8 hours a day. And a lot of people are just so obsessed with Gen Z and millennials when it comes to this conversation. So I'm like, oh, my mum also has a really great kind of spin to remind the hoteliers and the tech vendors, like, let's not just focus on Gen Z when we look at digitalizing the guest journey.
Yep. And I think there's a bit of a focus on the guest journey as a buzzword. As you said, everybody wants to kind of jump onto it. Whereas, yeah, to actually know your guest journey, I don't think there are many brands that do. So how do you work with partners to put a guest journey on paper? Like, what's your starting process without giving away too many of your tricks?
Yeah, and it's to be honest, it's really overwhelming. And I think me as an advisor who's been in the industry for over 15 years, is lucky enough to talk to both sides of vendors and tech vendors and operators. And I think, wow, like I'm confused and overwhelmed with the technology, the speed of adoption, the best use cases. And I'm not running a hotel. I don't have owners to report to, KPIs and budgets to meet. So I think it's really exciting, but it is really overwhelming. And unfortunately, post-COVID, hoteliers and operators just don't have the time to really strategize and really say like, okay, let's take all of the business leaders out of the business for 5 hours and whiteboard, what do we want to do with the guest journey? There are some amazing brands that make a focal point of doing that, but I think, everybody's just running, and occupancy, ADR, guest needs, guest expectations, everything is so intense for the hoteliers that they don't have time to look at the guest journey. And also, what is the guest journey to the guests? If we look at ourselves, me as a guest, I have 5 different guest preferences. How I travel with my girlfriends, I want an espresso martini. When I travel with my husband, I want a really nice glass of white wine. When I travel with my kids, I want a really strong coffee. So that alone, as an F&B director, how do you make sure you deliver me the right coffee? It's super overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Because also, I think we forget, and you said it really well, you have this one persona, but then you have, I'd say, not even micro moments, but different moments that person might go through and navigate. So then they create multiple journeys, because your journey as a guest with your partner, with your kids, with your girlfriends is completely different.
Yeah.
And thinking back to what you said of struggling to maybe bring people together in a room, if you can get everyone in a room for 5 hours, you're still going to achieve so much. So I think it is this case of making sure that is built into what you're doing instead of constantly running. And just taking that time out so you can map that journey.
Exactly. And I think whilst you're kind of like looking at innovation and leveraging the right technology to really, and looking at the different guest segments and how do I kind of meet their ever-changing needs, that's really fantastic. But you also have to get the basics right. Coming from guest satisfaction and guest experience, it really frustrates me when you see brands that have a super personalized, seamless booking experience or guest communication strategy, and it's so cool, and I'm like, wow. But then the bathroom's not clean, or there's a stain on the carpet. Doesn't matter how amazing that pre-arrival guest journey was, if you do not have the basics nailed. And I think then it's pointless. And I think, unfortunately, with technology and innovation and this like need to just kind of create that seamless guest journey, lots of operators can take the eye off the ball of getting those basics. And it really comes down to what kind of GM you have on property.
And would you say the same could be said the other way around? So let's say you have a really clunky, disjointed booking experience, but an amazing on-site experience. Do you feel that's as impactful? Or do you still think it is really when you lean into the in-person experience?
I won't come to your property if it's a clunky booking experience. I won't even get to the property. No. And I think it's not as detrimental once the guest arrives on property. If their on-property experience is great and, the service is fantastic, the food quality is amazing, then it's very quickly to forget that pre-arrival pain points. Whereas in the reverse, if you have nailed all of those pre-arrival guest experience, guest journey expectations, my expectations are super high. Yeah. And then if I arrive on property and I have a grumpy receptionist, it's like completely disjointed. And then that's it. That's when you then have this rippling impact of negative guest experience and negative online reviews and negative online reputation. So it really is, from my humble opinion, that on property, like the guest experience is the most important part. Yeah. You're probably thinking, Holly's like, what? It's the whole journey. But I think, yes, you can make up for bad allowances pre-stay by really nailing it. I don't know how much longer that's going to be able to last with guests.
Yeah. And I would imagine maybe it depends on the guest, you know, for some people where they want the ease of the pre-booking process, or I don't know, they want a really low touch service when it comes to being on property. So they expect the iPhone in the room to be able to control everything. And if that's not working, then that can suddenly break. So I think it's really interesting. You speak a lot about online reputation. How have you seen that change over your time? Because you've obviously the digital era has changed a lot, right?
So this is where I'm like, okay, it's been 15 years and it actually hasn't changed that much. But I do think the next 12 months is going to completely break and transform online reputation. The players in the field has changed a lot. So, you know, if you would go back 10 years ago, everybody was obsessed with TripAdvisor and it was all about TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor's market share on a sample size of 10,000 properties accounts for 11% of total reviews. So it's not that significant in terms of review volume. You still have many owners obsessed with TripAdvisor ranking positions. If you look at TripAdvisor's research, they claim they're a big part of the booking process on the other OTAs. Who knows? Fast forward, you know, so that was 10 years ago. Then kind of like 5 years ago, Google really had a huge presence in terms of online reviews. Then post-COVID, Booking.com, you know, at some points in 2022, 23, they accounted for up to 70% of all reviews in Europe, which is crazy. Recent studies show that that's declining. So the relationship between the big players is what's constantly changing. And I always think, okay, well, if Instagram decides to do hotel reviews today or tomorrow, what's that going to do to online reputation? So I think that's, I haven't really seen much change there. But when we look at the rise of AI, ChatGPT, TikTok, how important is online reviews? I'm so in two minds about the importance of reviews in today's world. Part of me thinks if you can nail a super cool, personalized, seamless experience and you're delivering to me the right booking journey for me, why do I need to validate that with a review? When you have great footage of the room and I can really get a sense of what is that brand, you know, what is the product like and the property, what is the brand essence like? Do I need to see what John Bloggs said about his previous stay? Then on the other hand, with the rise of AI and imagery, I'm super concerned about what is a real property anymore. You know, like there is some phenomenal properties where, you know, in Saudi Arabia and you look at it and you think, no, that's AI generated. There's no ways the restaurant is hanging from a cave. And then you're like, oh, it is real. And that's then where reviews are really important. So I'm really excited to see what online reputation is going to look like over the next 6, 9, 12 months.
And so you focus a lot on the word review. And I think my background, I would talk about social listening. So how do you feel? And, you know, I worked on ratings and reviews, and when I was at Nestle, we saw, I think, the average person was 70% more likely to convert when they read a review for pet care. So then the business mandated reviews. Are we now in an era of moving from reviews and just talking online? Because then isn't there a fine line between if someone's writing something about your property, in essence, that's a review, but maybe it's not caught or captured because it hasn't got the stars. So I wonder how do you think that's changed?
And I think this is where the confusion and overwhelm comes in the industry. Like, unfortunately, the big players haven't really carved out or given a roadmap or a blueprint of what that looks like. The merge between TikTok, ChatGPT with Booking.com, TripAdvisor and Google reviews, and that social listening and a hotel review, what does that look like? So I don't know what it's going to look like. I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think it's really important with my clients when, like for 2025, when we were putting online reputation KPIs on their balanced scorecards for GMs, for the first time, I was like, let's have some flexible allowance there. Let's set this for 6 months because we don't know what it's going to look like in July or what January 2026 is going to look like. So I think it's more about just any processes, KPIs that you have in place that on online reputation, there's a little bit of buoyancy there. And social listening it's so blurred. Blurred lines. Sorry, but it is, I think about it all the time because it is really blurred lines. And then, ChatGPT is pulling in reviews at the same time. So it's really difficult time.
Yeah. And I think there's so much out there that it's hard to like wade through it all. But I would say the key thing is to listen, to see what's being said about your brand. Because again, I'm quite surprised at how many brands are operating in the digital space, have amazing hotels, but they've got absolutely no idea about what their consumers are saying.
Or completely misaligned. I had a client once and they had 35 properties, kind of like standard 4-star city centre hotels. And on their website, a really nice website, the whole Book Direct campaign was all about their sleep quality. Come and stay with us and we have the best sleep and blah, blah, blah. We all know sleep is a huge trend at the moment. And actually, when you looked at their guest intelligence online and their guest sentiment, I shouldn't laugh because it's really bad, but 58% of all sleep mentions were negative. And it's like, why, somebody in marketing really should have looked at their guest intelligence data before. Yes, exactly. Before they're like, let's go with a sleep campaign for our Book Direct. And actually, when you looked at the sentiment around guest service, friendliness, staff, it was huge. They had 97% positive mentions about the warm welcome. So it's like simple switch. Now, as a guest researching that hotel, imagine, I'm looking at this amazing booking experience and then I look at reviews. We know reviews are still an important part of the booking and buying cycle. I'm just not going to book that property. So again, like that listening is really, really key, not just from a guest experience and guest satisfaction of, okay, how can we change our guest experience to improve and enhance? But from that positioning point of view, am I in line with what my guests are perceiving from me and not looking inward and saying, I think this is what we stand for and what our best parts of the guest experience are. It's saying, listening to what our guests are liking most about the brand.
Yeah. And I think as you said it, you're then just putting more value on the guest experience. It's not just about understanding what somebody wants, but it's using it as a marketing opportunity. So it's insight driven. You're not just sitting in a room as marketers making assumptions about what somebody wants to hear about your brand.
Exactly. And you're setting the right guest expectation. I mean, imagine if you'd booked that brand and you are a mum with 2 young kids and you're like, I can't wait to have like the best night's sleep. And it's kind of okay. Of course, it's going to be that much worse in your mind because they've said, come and stay for the best. So again, it's like, and that going back to your previous question, Holly, is like, what has not changed in 15 years? It's like, set the right expectations and then make sure you constantly deliver them. And that's how you get a good online reputation, whether that's on social media listening or whether that's through hotel reviews.
And what would you say to a company, a hotel that hasn't got a good reputation? Like how can you change that when there's so much talk in a negative way about your brand? Like, what would you say to that?
So it really depends on how the market is performing. So in 2023, I had so many frustrating conversations with CEOs, ops directors, because I had to really fight the crusade of how important guest satisfaction is, because they were like, my occupancy is great, my ADR is great, I'm smashing budget. Do I need to care about it? And I'm like, yes, because this bubble that we're all riding is going to burst at some point. And then that's really where you get to see the sense of the hoteliers versus the people that are just in it for the business, whereas I would literally see one client and that would be the conversation around the boardroom table of like, Danica, we get it. Guest satisfaction is important, but right now it's not a priority for us because we're doing so great. We're going to focus on, profit margins, or we're going to focus on booking conversions. Yeah. And then I would go to another meeting and then that client would say like, okay, Danica, we're doing really well, but how can we continue to improve and enhance the guest experience? And how can we maintain this? So that was interesting, like different takes on it.
And those 2 types of clients, like what are the key differences? Would you say it's about business maturity? Like why are some people clued up to understand, okay, this is a bigger strategic piece that has longer term value?
The culture, just the culture of that brand and that essence and the individual, like sometimes you might see investors come in and buy a property that's purely an investment. they don't really care as much. Maybe that's a bit unfair to say, but sometimes that can be a bit of an assumption, but they're more about the financial performance, of course. Whereas if it's, you know, you've grown up in hospitality in your blood, your mum was a waitress, your dad was a GM or whatever, then you care. It's not just the financial. So that's the key difference. What was also interesting during that time in 2023 was the different strategies that people had that were revenue led. So some people would kind of play around with occupancy to say, okay, like I want to keep my rates really high. I'm going to lower my occupancy to maintain my guest satisfaction. Because of course we had the staff shortage issue, which is still an issue. So that was really fascinating, like how, you know, the revenue managers were puppeteers with playing with all of those different metrics.
Yeah. And how much did they get an opportunity to play with like the pre-arrival piece?
Yeah, so the pre-arrival piece in 2023 really was disconnected to operations and what could be delivered. So, you know, post-COVID, everybody wants to travel. Hoteliers are like, okay, let's maximize, you know, the upsell, the ancillary revenue, and try and get as much money as possible and look at that pre-arrival booking stage. You know, plus we had the right technology come on place, guest communications, being able to send a WhatsApp message and check in online, digital check-in, digital door locks. You know, so what happened 2023, it was a lot of hoteliers focused on the pre-arrival upsell revenue parts, but then operationally couldn't deliver. So you would see in online reviews, my romantic petal balcony package didn't arrive, you know, or housekeeping didn't put the balloons correctly, or I paid £100 for a happy 25th birthday balloon and it wasn't there when I arrived. So that was a huge disconnect as well. And then same with sustainability as well. You had a lot of people pre-arrival like focusing on sustainability and, you know, hang your towel up and you'll get a free drink at the bar, and then operationally there was a disconnect. I come back to my room and I have fresh towels still. So this is the thing, like why, and this is why I'm so excited to talk to you, Holly, because I feel like we both come from the different worlds that can merge together, because I love the pre-arrival, digitalizing the guest journey. But again, operationally, you have to be able to deliver it. So I always like to say to hotel marketers that are looking at their positioning, the booking journey is like, bring in people from ops. You need to have somebody from housekeeping, from maintenance, from front of house, and, you know, and from F&B.
Definitely. I think that's a truly omni-channel approach, right?
Yeah.
Of having everybody from all the different departments cross-functionally in a room, because they all see such different parts of it. Because as you said that about the towels, I can remember back to a hotel where they were stripping our bed every day, you know, and they had this nice little thing, we're sustainably conscious.
Yeah, save the
water, shower quickly, all this jazz. But I was like, but you're stripping our beds every day.
Yeah.
And it's very nice, but then your words and your actions aren't matching up.
Exactly. And the tolerance to that from the guests is getting less and less and less. You know, like right now we're like, oh, it's not very nice. You know, maybe in 6 months' time with global warming and everything else, we're going to be like, no, this is not good enough. Yeah. You know, and so that, and it's the same with guest communications, you know, like with chatbot accuracy or response times pre-arrival, like the tolerance levels for those mistakes is just getting to zero as a guest.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think so many other industries are moving much quicker on it. So what happens, and again, we forget the guest is navigating so many other journeys with so many other brands, is they have a seamless experience with another brand outside of hospitality. Then they come to you and they have a chatbot that is clunky and confused, just saying your name incorrectly or trying to pass you on to an agent.
Exactly. Or, you know, they arrive on property and it's like, is it your first day here? Like, no. You just sent me a pre-stay email saying like, we can't wait to welcome you back. And now on reception, you're like, is it your first day? Like, not good enough in 2025.
This is very true, yeah. Because it also makes you feel just another customer, right? Yeah. And everybody wants personalization. I personally love it when you show up and they say your name, and I love the handwritten notes in a room, you know, that they're excited to have you there. So I think those kind of touches, digitalization should be used to support that, not to remove it.
And used throughout. So like often what you'll see now is like digitalization pre-arrival and on property being led by the CIOs. super seamless. So, I arrive into my room and it's like, welcome, Danica. This is the weather. We know you like children. And so you have 2 young kids. These are the, I don't know, whatever activities we have around the pool, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, cool. But then the receptionist is like, is it your first time? Yeah. So that's almost worse, I think, as a guest. It's like if you start to dip your toe into that digitalized, seamless, personalized experience, you need to like dive in and make sure everybody has the same thing. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless as well.
And do you think that is lacking because of systems and that fully integrated piece?
Yes, it is. I think, the whole open API conversation, it's like, yes, the technology's there, but I think it's more political on the tech vendor side in terms of like the acquisitions, how you actually really want to integrate 2 different systems, who owns what companies. Yeah. That's a problem. But again, like when we spoke about the idea of bringing in operations into those meetings, it's like the time. I don't have the time for my F&B manager to come out and sit in a marketing meeting for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So that resource is still such an issue. So I think there's a little bit of the technology politics, should I say, because the technology is definitely there, the integrations, the APIs, systems can talk to each other. I think we've moved on from like legacy tech. There's amazing tech vendors that have really carved out a new way of having different systems talk to each other. But I think it's the political landscape of the tech vendors and the acquisitions that maybe holds that back. And then from the operator side, it's really the resource, and the time to do that whiteboard thinking and bring all my team members in. Yeah. Sorry to the tech vendors and hotels here, but this is just, kind of a concern that I can see happening in the industry.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And I think I'm definitely less involved with the politics. And anytime we're talking with partners and we're trying to understand, and it does seem sometimes that the technology is a bit forgotten. And so then without the tech, you're like, okay, well, there are other ways, brief your staff so they know who's coming in the morning. So they also know the communications that a guest has received. And I think that's then when you have somebody sending emails, somebody sending the WhatsApp, somebody else sending the booking confirmation. That guest doesn't know that that's come from however many other people. They just see one brand experience, but it's so disjointed.
Yeah. And that's if it's direct, if it's on the OTA, you throw in a whole new other touch points. I remember a study once when I worked for a previous tech vendor, and we did a case study on a hotel in Amsterdam. And it was city centre, a 1-night stay near the airport. It was €80 a night on booking.com. How many touch points do you think that guest had throughout their guest journey for a 1-night city centre stay for €80?
But I don't want to guess.
If you had to. Across the whole guest journey, from the hotel, the OTA.
I mean, it shouldn't be super high, but like close to 10?
29. So this is also a huge problem. And I think the tech vendors and the operators and the guests, like nobody knows what is that sweet spot. So I think it's now, exactly, it's definitely not 29. And I think, whilst we now have the technology to do cool things like communicate to you via WhatsApp or SMS pre-arrival, to have micro guest feedback surveys, you check in, how was check-in, you have a cocktail, how was the cocktail? We still don't know the right conversions and the right sweet spot. And I think nobody is really providing that blueprint that I can see, and hotels certainly don't have the time or the experience to do A/B split testing. They're not marketeers. The technology vendors, it's new technology. We still don't know the sweet spot. So I think that's a bit of a problem of like the actual best way to implement to get the right conversions to avoid 29 touch points for a 1-night stay.
That's wild. I mean, I've been diving into the data around omnichannel, and Expedia and Google said the average consumer goes across 38 sites just when they're looking for a trip. So 29. Now I feel like this 38 should be so much higher than that.
Exactly.
And that's just frustrating because we're all doing so many other things. Yeah. If I had to go through that.
Well, you just will become, blackout. You just won't look at it. Imagine if you're a corporate traveler and you're somebody who travels, 200 nights a year in different hotels. You just don't look at it. And, unread emails, I'm sure you've got the stats on how many unread emails you have. And I used to say earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about what questions to ask audience to warm them up. So 6 months ago, my question would always be like, has anybody got an unread WhatsApp message on their phone? And everyone would be like, oh, no, never. But funny now, if I look at my phone, I have lots of unread WhatsApp messages on my phone. So already WhatsApp as a channel, just me personally, I'm becoming a little bit, exactly. I'm like, okay, like I don't need to read that, especially if it's a business telling me a message that's not relevant to me.
I think with WhatsApp, I'm trying to warm up to the notion that a lot of people are using WhatsApp for business, especially work with the Middle East. We have clients where they want to communicate on WhatsApp.
Contracts on WhatsApp.
Yeah, exactly. And like verbal agreements on WhatsApp. And I'm like, okay, but we have a team. So if we have a WhatsApp and you send it to me, I might miss it.
Yes.
And, but then the way the consumers operate are a bit different. I personally don't like to use it for business. But so I think we have to look at, the cultural behaviors, the different market shifts happening with that.
Yeah.
But we are being so flooded with comms. I am the same as you. I can't even tell you how many I have unread on WhatsApp. But it's quite shocking.
So imagine like you're a hotel brand and you go to a conference in Q1 last year and it's all about how cool WhatsApp is. Like I've got on my notes, 25% of travelers are willing to share personal data in order to get personalization. We know 65% of millennials and Gen Z want to check in online. So imagine if it's like, okay, cool. We know we've got this technology. We know there's a need. And here we are 6 months on where people are like, oh, no, we're getting bored of that channel.
Yeah.
It's just like, we can't keep up.
Yeah, I think they get excited by the channels. But talking about the check-ins, I think we still have this thing where they have the intention, but you will still show up and go to check in and they ask you for all the same details.
Yes.
So that's
what was the point of checking in online?
And again, that is just like such an immediate point of being disjointed that creates so much friction.
Yeah. And people often compare the technology to the airlines. And it's like, really, do you want to compare my check-in experience to how I check into Ryanair on a flight? In terms of digitalizing the check-in journey. So I think, again, that really depends on what brand you are, what you stand for, what kind of guest you are. I love to check in online when I'm traveling for corporate. I would never check in online if I'm paying, a high ADR rate and I'm traveling personally. I want to get all of the experiences I can. So again, really difficult for the hotel to know when to use that technology, at what stage of the guest journey, and to what guest.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And your point around the airline, and I saw somebody online on LinkedIn talking about, the airline, this is the first step of the user journey of going to a hotel. I disagreed with that because obviously there's so many other points of the journey that we talk about. But do you think that is why airlines are being compared to what is an airline journey? Is it just because it sits right before the journey of arriving at a hotel?
Yeah, I think it's the most pointless comparison ever. Like, I get it maybe from, I don't come from a revenue background, but I always hear people saying like, well, like revenue management in the airlines, we should look to them. Like, okay, great. But when you look at a guest experience, I don't know, maybe if I was flying like in a private jet, that might be the purpose of my stay. One day. But that's not the reality right now. So it's such a pointless comparison to me in terms of that inspirational book look journey. I think what is interesting, what I'm seeing with clients on the hotel side is that the destination is no longer the purpose. It's no longer like, I'm going to go to Greece, what hotel shall I stay at? It's the hotel itself, which is why I love what you guys are doing, because it makes it so exciting. If you are a brand that has something very unique and special that you can show off, it doesn't matter where you are, I will come to your property because of your property. It's no longer really location first, then property. And I think that's really fun for like independent brands or properties that have very unique features to talk about online and cut through the noise.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that kind of swap of somebody picking a destination, I can certainly see that with, the likes of a Man. They get excited because they're opening a new hotel. So they will go to that place because of the brand.
Yes, yeah. And I think, for me, for example, I have 1 week in August, bad time because everything's super expensive, with my husband, child-free. My criteria is I don't want to travel for too far. I want to hike. I want to have a bit of luxury. I want to move around within those 6 nights. I want to have something that's, super luxurious, but quirky as well. I want to stay in a tree house. I also want a spa. I'm serious. This is like what I'm looking for. I don't care where in the world it is, you know. So how do I find that? Obviously, ChatGPT. This is what I want. And it's like, ping, you should go to, it said Tenerife, actually. I was like, I don't want to go. I know, but not in August. You know, when I live in Barcelona, I was like, and so I think, okay, with that example, like, how do hotels get a piece of that? Yeah. I guess when I'm doom scrolling at 2 a.m. on Instagram.
This is how it is.
Which was your post. And I was like, this is so me.
It's how it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's brands missing out because that is that point of making a decision about where am I going, who am I booking with. And they rely too much on this heavily branded content instead of making it aspirational. You know, we work with partners where they don't want to use guests and it's a strategy to not use guests in the content, but people want to imagine themselves there. So that lack of a placement of a person, that creates a slight barrier. Or, you know, how is your brand showing up on social? Is it inclusive language? Are you talking directly to that person that is doom scrolling or that's saving? And then, you know, even now looking at the other OTAs or not just TripAdvisor, but now you can look at videos on Expedia. And with the rise of social commerce, there's so much opportunity for a brand to miss out because they just haven't, they're not present there.
Yeah. And you can really leverage all of that as well and cut through the noise, you know, like I'm happy to receive, trust me, if one of these new hotels, you know, opening in Saudi that look incredible, I would listen and I would open every single one of their WhatsApp messages and emails, and because it's like I want to know everything that you're doing. So I think brands absolutely, when they leverage the right partners, not just technology, they can, you know, really cut through the noise, have these touch points that just add value to the guest experience, get me super excited, and then make sure they nail on arrival, like we said earlier on, and then it's like I'll come back and good old return and recommend.
Exactly. We love this bit. We haven't spoken so much about post-stay.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about this in terms of communication piece, turning somebody into an advocate? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's really important that, and I'm not from the marketing world anymore, of hotel marketing, but I think it's really interesting, this concept of like micro influencers, which I keep hearing about. And I think it's like focusing on, you know, the guests that have really enjoyed their stay, understanding, well, what part of the stay did they enjoy? And I'm really talking about the brands that have a really high guest satisfaction of, let's say, 95%, 94%, but they want to get to 95, 96%. So it's these guests that are really, these brands that completely understand, you know, what guests like, what they don't like. They've made those improvements, and then they're trying to understand what they love, and then replicating that in kind of like a social, okay, let's find the right micro influencer that can help broaden. So it's really interesting. And maybe you've seen this with some of your clients in that luxury sector, where they have an influencer and they might have a slight altercation on property or an area of the guest experience that they're not satisfied with.
They show up and people don't know they're an influencer.
Yes. Oh, right. Okay, that happens. Okay, so I've spoke to a few hoteliers where the influencer will film and live record the situation. And then what happens is all of their followers bombard fake Google reviews, fake TripAdvisor reviews, and completely bombard that hotel with their own experience. So this is a huge concern that often marketers don't think about when they're booking influencers.
Oh, I have so many things to say about influencers and working well with them. I think this is where hotels enter into that and they forget this is an agreement.
Yes.
So you can create parameters around that. It doesn't have to be, we bow down to you because you're an influencer. It's okay, anything you post, if you do want to, you know, review it before it goes out, then you can stipulate that because you're giving them a lot of value.
Yeah.
And you can give guidelines, but then you need to know that you have to be prepared to have that influencer because you're inviting them because the clue is in the title, they're influential.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that your teams are clued up, that when they arrive at check-in, you're not asking their name and like, you know, people have the faces.
Yeah.
And then also doing that cross-reference of, okay, what kind of influencer are we bringing? Because if it is the kind where if there's a conflict, instead of trying to resolve it, they just use this to get a good clout score on their socials, you can kind of see that in their profiles and see what kind of person they are, I think.
Really? That's good to know.
I would say so, because
I get very nervous about it. I just like imagine this poor staff member, like, you know, we've got this influencer being shouted at, like,
that's not nice.
No.
That's not nice. But I think there has to be this due diligence. It has to be seen to be a partnership.
Yeah.
And not doing that background checking of, okay, what kind of content do they post? How do they talk about brands? Which other brands do they talk about?
Yeah.
Are their followers genuine, or is it a model who posts, I always say this, is she just in bikini shots? Then most of her followers are probably men that want to see her in bikini shots.
And
So
not the hotel.
and not your audience that are maybe going to book.
Or they want to take their wife to the hotel.
maybe.
Maybe I should take my wife there.
I saw it on this Instagram's account, on this influencer's account. Yeah. But there are just so many pieces to it. And again, when we speak with partners, they talk influencers, and we say, okay, was that activation successful for you? Oh, it looked like it got good views.
Eyeballs aren't good views. And so I would say make sure that then the online reputation is bolted onto that. Yeah. So you have the influencer, they come and stay, like keeping, like the PR or the marketing person needs to be diving into their guest intelligence tool and looking at volume of reviews, quality of reviews, and just soundboarding that nothing fishy is going on there.
Definitely, because you want to see that you had this positive output, and you're not just looking at it with vanity metrics. You're not just saying, oh yeah, we got some nice content out of it.
Yes.
And I think, again, these exchanges, are you looking for nice content? If that's all it is, great. Are you looking to extend your audience? Have you got a shared audience with them? But again, 9 times out of 10, a lot of partners, they don't know what they're looking for. It's just, we just want to activate an influencer.
And it comes back to making sure that you have a good online reputation in the first place. Because even if you have one great influencer that is your brand advocate, if I go onto Google or Booking.com or TripAdvisor or maybe Instagram and I see 4 negative reviews, I'm not going to, again, it comes back to that disconnect. We're not silly as guests. You know, we do our research and it all needs to, across the omni-channel, everything needs to stack up.
And we have access to so much of this. So yeah, we definitely do our researching. I mean, I was trying to go through this process of what omni-channel is and, you know, how many channels we hop across and reading reviews and tagged images. And it's a bit of a sea, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to bring it back to maybe what somebody could action, let's say today, tomorrow, next year, when it comes to guest experience.
Yes.
What would you say? So when I'm saying today, this is like light touch, minimal financial investment.
Yeah. Make sure, I'm going to assume everybody has a guest intelligence platform. If not, call me and I'll help you. But just the idea is make sure that everybody in the business is looking at guest feedback, regardless of, you know, I spoke to one chain, Numa Hotels, and they were telling me that even their engineers are looking at guest feedback. You know, it's the one thing that every single employee of your business has is the guest, in common is the guest. So that's something really simple, really tangible. Make sure you're delivering the right data to the right person. So, you know, if you're in revenue and commercial functions, you're looking at guest data. If you are a PR agency, you've set up alerts in terms of online reviews. So that's something that you can implement today.
And tomorrow, I love that, by the way. I think that's great. Even just alerts. You know, that's,
yes.
I think everybody has access.
Yes, exactly. And just bringing it to the table as well. You know, talk about guest satisfaction. Make sure that that is an agenda point on every single meeting. Something to do tomorrow. It's a really difficult one. I think is pushback. So if I was an operator, and what I recommend to my clients is to push back on all of the partners and vendors that you have. To get as much strategic advice as possible. So, okay, Danica, we think that you want to digitalize your guest communication strategy, and this is how you're going to do it. Okay, great. What time should I send my WhatsApp message? You know, what about my US guests? They're going to have SMS. When should I send my pre-arrival? Is it 9 a.m.? Is it 1 p.m.? And really help your vendors become partners and help share best practices. So that's what I would do tomorrow. I would also soundboard when I'm looking at my digital tech stack, the vendors that are the most authentic and honest, because nobody knows what it's going to look like tomorrow. Yeah. You know, I went to a conference and some guy on stage was talking about what AI is going to look like in our industry in 3 years' time. And I was like, exactly. I was like, mind me, reader, like, no. And I think if you are really confident in your product that you're offering, you should be able to have those transparent conversations of like, hey, I'm a guest intelligence expert. I really don't know what online reviews are going to look like, but I'm the right partner to help you navigate that world. So that's also for tomorrow.
And that's the importance of having strategy behind it, because at least from my perspective and how I think of strategy, it's not about the tech. No. It's the foundation of everything. And then if the tech changes, but then that's when your strategy should be reviewed, your guest journey reviewed. So I think that's very insightful. And next year we're talking bigger investment, more heads around a table. What could that look like?
So if I was to go off the base of all of the conferences that I've attended, I would say employ, but it sounds very expensive. So maybe outsource and get a fractional AI leader. Somebody that sits at the table that is always bringing that AI forefront. It's something that I'm not passionate about. It's something that frustrates me because it does distract from the basics of, is your room clean? Are you nailing the guest satisfaction? But it is so imperative that you understand that. And I think having somebody that represents that future technology point around the table is important.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a buzzword, right? But we see how it's impacting all industries. And I think we could even say new social platforms act as a distraction. So it's a case of either understand how this works, get on board, or get left behind.
Exactly. And also just like the ethics around it, I think it's really important. Like, if I was to do social media as a brand and I was looking to leverage AI, and I had an AI bikini model, for example, like I think ethically as well, it's not just about the technological side. I think whoever that person is that's representing AI is bringing the social and ethical morals, or at least having that conversation. And I think that's also part of that role that we all need to be thinking about.
And it's knowing where you stand on AI. So you can either like it or not, but where does your company draw the line on where it uses it and where it doesn't? I was really shocked, not to dive too much into AI, but H&M were saying they were going to be using AI versions of their models.
Yeah.
And I think that's shocking. And even my time at L'Oreal 15 years ago, we suddenly said, okay, we're not photoshopping models, and that was written, the Body Shop under L'Oreal, before anybody calls me out for that. But that was 15 years ago. So now we're going to have to be declaring this image was created by AI, which we already are.
Exactly. And it comes back to then like everything that's happening in the beauty standards of AI. And I mean, even like filters, we go back 10 years ago of Instagram filters. If we look at what that's done to the beauty industry, I think it's really interesting what that's doing to hospitality. Yeah. Like as a brand, do I want to be transparent that my pictures are edited, that I'm using AI in the seamless video experience of my room when you're panning my room? I don't know what that looks like, but I think maybe the answer's not there, but people need to be having the conversations, and that's why next year you need to have that person at the table
again. I haven't with that camera. No, you're good.
Camera's not the friend.
So I think the thing is, this is just technology evolving, and AI is it. Everybody is, some people are scared and some people are sat on the side of great. So I think anything that can be used to add value in some way, not to deceive, not to cheat, then I think it can be positive. So there are so many ways where the systems can support. This is great. So I love that. If you can't afford to have somebody in your team, bring in an AI consultant, do an AI sprint. Something like this could be very nice to understand, okay, what could that look like for our business? And again, what is our standpoint on it? So at least even there are some hotels, they still post rendered photos. They should probably tell people these are renders. They're not.
Do they still do? Yeah, they do.
I feel like I have a good eye for it on web, and I'm like, is that really a photo? No, that looks like a render.
It brings me back to my old hotel marketing days when, the bed would be 12 feet wide with the wide camera lens that you would use in a bedroom. And it's just it comes back to the simple guest expectations, set them accordingly and deliver them. And AI is the same kind of evolution maybe of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Other than the social, ethical dilemmas that comes with it.
A whole other piece. So for anybody who wants support on their guest experience, how can they connect with you? How can they find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn. I mean, I have a website, morningstargx.com, but it's kind of evolving, and that's where I'm really lucky that I'm evolving in where I work and how I work. So today I have a confidence session with women in technology. I think LinkedIn is always the most up-to-date place to find me.
Well, I feel like we could have chatted all day on all these topics.
We 100%.
Probably have you on again. We'll talk more on AI. So thank you so much, Danica.
Thank you so much. And I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
I need to invite you on mine and talk about AI as well.
Okay, we'll do that. Amazing.
Thank you.